loving and fearing Hashem is actually very close to you. It's actually very accessible to you. There's Kallah in your hearts and in your minds to do it. It's not only that you can be commanded to love and fear God, but actually it is quite accessible to love and fear Hashem. And he goes through two different methods of generating these feelings of love for Hashem. How do we generate a feeling of love for Hashem? And so the first method is what we would call the long, short way. It's the long, short way because it actually takes a lot of effort and a lot of work and a lot of time to cultivate this love. But once it is cultivated, it's this lasting love that will accompany you throughout your life, and it's very present in your consciousness. And that is really a method of transforming your animal consciousness, that we were given this animal consciousness that communicates with the godly soul. And working on this process of communication between the animal soul and the godly soul, and I just walked in at the end of what the rabbi was talking about, but he spoke about taking these ideas about Hashem and really bringing them into your das, bringing them into your worldview, giving them a language that your body understands. And through that experience of your body starting to understand about Hashem, then it begins to love Hashem, right? That through the experience of understanding that Hashem gives us life at every moment, through the experience of understanding how the greatness and vastness of God, it begins, if I actually take the time to sit and meditate on it and teach it to my animal consciousness, then I will begin to love Hashem. That will create within me a love for Hashem. The same way within any relationship that we have. Any relationship that we have, the more we contemplate on that relationship, the more time we spend with the other person, and we speak to them, hopefully, if they're compatible with us, right? And we speak to them, and we have conversations with them, and we learn about them. The more you learn about a person, the more you love them. The love grows with your knowledge. That is the first type of love that we have for Hashem. But we said in the Pasuk, Kikar velacha hadavar ma'ay. It is very accessible to you. And that doesn't seem very accessible. It is accessible. We all have brains. We can all learn about Hashem, and through that knowledge, create a love. But is it very accessible? That doesn't seem very accessible. In my mind, very means quick. It means that I can have it right away. It doesn't seem to be something that I have to sit for years to completely transform myself and learn all about God to cultivate this love and understanding. So what does it mean that it is very accessible? And for that, the Alter Rebbe turns to another method. And this is what he calls the long, short way. The short, long way. The short, long way is because this is an instant meditation that we can bring into our consciousness to not create a new love, but actually unveil an intuitive love that is already there. Every single Jew is born with a love for Hashem. It's a Yerusha lanu me'avosenu. It is something that we've inherited from our fathers, that we have a love for Hashem. The problem is that all the other stuff in my life covers up this love. And I become out of touch with this love. And I'm not aware that I even have it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about why it's so hard to access this love. But this love is something I just need to access. I don't have to create it. And therefore, I can pull it up instantly when I need it. But it's not a state of being that will impact me for a long time. So if we go back to the relationship example, if we all know that there are certain moments in our relationships with other people that, let's say, there's a moment where you have a crisis, right? There's a crisis, something really disastrous happens. And two things can happen in a moment of crisis. Either the relationship can fall apart. That is very possible and legitimate response to a crisis. Or the relationship can really, really bond together and become extremely strong. Because what happens is that crisis reveals how important we are to each other, right? So even if before this crisis, even before the moment of, things are really bad, someone's not healthy, something, dangerous happens, and before that moment, maybe we were fighting, and we were not in a good space. But in that moment of the crisis, it was unveiled to us that we are tied together no matter what. right? I cannot live my life without you. That's what that moment of crisis reveals. And in that moment, I'm able to access that love, and we use that love to get through this crisis. But after that crisis is over, we're still going to have to go back to building the relationship back up in that slow way that we mentioned before that takes a lot of work and effort. It's not going to extend past that. But it's there and available for us when we are in these sort of crisis moments. So similarly, this type of love for Hashem is available to us at any time that we need it. And there are times in our lives when we do not have the headspace to sit and meditate about Hashem. There are times in our lives when we're feeling very disconnected from Hashem and we need that boost of feeling of love for Hashem and also being propelled into action for God that we don't have. Again, either it's because of not having the headspace. There's a seasons in life. A woman just has a baby. She doesn't have the time to sit and contemplate about Hashem. You're going through a hard time, and you have a million other things on your head, and Parnasa is a big burden on your head, and you don't necessarily have the headspace to sit and contemplate on Hashem. The relationship with Hashem is still accessible because it's there the whole time. It's actually there. We just need to learn how to trigger it and how to tap into that inherent, latent, hidden love. So I wanted to actually read some of the Tanya that talks about this. And so I drew some excerpts from 3 different prakim. So I'm going to start with the first one. I'll read it and I will translate. You can follow along, if you wish, on the paper. So the Alter Rebbe opens up with this topic, and he starts with Ulei Tesefas Bir Be'er Hetiv Milas Ma'id, and to give extra explanation, a good explanation on the word Ma'id, that it is very accessible. Like we said before, we're referring to the pasuk of Kikari Ve'lacha Hadavar Ma'id Ve'gaimer, that it's very accessible to you to love and fear Hashem. Shahi Ava Misutara Shabalev Klalos Yisrael. This is the hidden love that is in the general soul of every Jew. Shahi Yerusha Lanu Mei Avesenu, that it is inherited to us, that we receive it as an inheritance from our fathers. So we all receive from, if you're descendant from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, or you're a person who joined the Jewish nation and therefore received a Jewish soul, you receive in the spiritual DNA of your soul a love for Hashem. It is built into that DNA. So the same way we receive physical characteristics from our parents, we also receive spiritual characteristics from our parents that are programmed into our DNA. And one of those is the love for Hashem, the hidden love for Hashem. V'lachein afilu kal shebekala. And therefore, even the people who are, kal means literally lighthearted in their approach to Judaism, meaning that they don't take their Judaism very seriously. Upaishe Yisrael, and big sinners. Maisrim nafsham al kedushas Hashem al harayv. Very often, in many instances, will give up their lives for the sake of heaven. And they will suffer great suffering, shalai lachbar b'Hashem echad, so as not to deny the one God. Va'af imheim barim v'amer aretz ve'ein yedim gedulas Hashem. And that's even if they are not knowledgeable people at all. Even if they are people who don't know anything about Judaism, they will still not distance themselves from that Jewish identity. It's that Jewish identity that they cannot distance themselves from. What he's saying over here is that we have this love for Hashem. This love for Hashem does not come from an intellectual space. Earlier we mentioned that there is love that can be born out of a knowing, out of knowledge, out of an intellectual space. But there is a love that is intuitive. It is super rational. It is higher than reason. And therefore we see that it is not only the super learned people who gave up their lives for Judaism. It was not only the super learned people who would, when they said convert or die, stood up to that test. And more so, like that, it was not only super learned people that if they said, no, you need to just say, like you have to deny the fact that you are Jewish, right? To hide the fact that you're Jewish. When something comes to question that essential identity of a Jew, it's impossible because at the core of who I am, I know that this is who I am, right? So I could live my whole life with this deep core knowledge of who I am. But the problem is that it's never questioned. So because it's never questioned, it's never activated, right? The way that identity is activated is when it is questioned. So I live my whole life, and I have at the core of me this deep Jewishness. I have at the core of who I am this deep sense that I am a Jew. I don't act necessarily like I am a Jew because I never connected to that identity. I never connected to that core Jewishness of who I am. And then something happens that questions my Jewishness. Something happens that questions my identity, and all of a sudden that part inside of me wakes up. Because when it comes to a matter of identity, when something pushes against it, I feel like I cannot be cut off from it. And we see this happen to Jews all the time, that when unfortunately something not so good happens that questions the identity of the Jewish people, the neshama wakes up. Because that spark, that core Jewishness of who I am is now activated. I've activated that space inside of me that we referred to before, that ava misuteres. And in language in other places, the Alter Rebbe talks about how that ava misuteres is like a flintstone, that it could be submerged in the ocean, thousands of feet underwater for a long time, and be completely covered by wetness, right, which is the opposite of love, which is heat, which is fire. But when you take that flintstone out of the water and you strike it, what happens? It still has fire inside. That's the nature of the flintstone, is that even if it has been so far removed from its expression for a long, long, long time, and its expression, its identity has never been questioned, it's never been struck, and therefore the fire never comes out. But as soon as that identity is rubbed against, as soon as there's friction against that identity, it brings it out in such a strong way. So, okay, I can hear this and be like, okay, the proof to me that I have a love for Hashem inside of me is that if someone would tell me that you need to be cut off from your Judaism, then you would give up your life. But how does that help me at a time when that identity is not threatened and not questioned? How does this help me in my regular life? We said that this is meant to be very accessible to me all the time, right? How does that help me all the time? So the way that this helps me is going back, let's read a little bit more inside, and then we'll talk about how we can apply this meditation all the time. So moving on, this is from Parak Yutes, the next Parak. And to give further explanation, we need to explain that which is written, Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, that the soul of a Jew is a flame of Hashem. Per Yisrael Hakarim Adam, which means that the Jewish people who are called Adam, Nishmasam hi lamashal ka'ar haner. Our souls are like a fire. We're compared to a fire. Shemisnanea tamid lamayla betivai. That naturally are constantly seeking to go upward into their source. So the Alter Rebbe is referencing here the Greek philosopher's understanding of the elements of earth. That there's fire, wind, earth, and water. And each of those four elements are always attracted to their source. So this is sort of how they would explain gravity, is that anything with mass is going to fall to the earth because the earth is the greatest mass, right? And like the source of mass. So everything that is constantly pulled to its own source. Even with water droplets, you see if you put two water droplets close to each other, even if you don't fully connect them, they actually they merge together. So similarly with fire, this is how they explain why is it that fire is constantly flickering upwards? Because it wants to actually reconnect with, what's the great ball of fire? The sun. That it wants to reconnect with the great ball of fire, the sun, and be reabsorbed into the sun. The interesting thing is that fire on some level is a little bit unique with this, in that when the mass is pulled to the earth, so let's say a rock falls down, right? When the rock falls down, it still remains a rock that's on the earth. What happens to the fire when it gets re-included into the sun? It has no identity of its own anymore. So you can say that the yearning of the fire to reunite with its source, it's almost slightly suicidal, where it's going to completely give up its entire independence when it is reunited with its source. And that is actually the nature of our souls. Our souls, on some level, do not desire at all to be separate from Hashem. Our soul's greatest desire is just to be re-included in its source, which is Hashem. So when we're using the mashal of the fire for the Jewish soul, the point we're bringing out is this point of this desire to be re-included in where it came from. The soul cannot be, the biggest source of pain for the soul is to be separated from Hashem. To be separate from Hashem is so painful for the soul. But then Hashem created us in this reality where what is our lived experience is that Hashem puts us into a body, and what is the greatest threat to the body? The greatest threat to the body is the soul, because the greatest threat to the body is to lose its independence. Right? So the body's entire desire, and maybe our animal consciousness' entire desire, is to be independent, to be its own thing. And the soul's entire desire is to be re-included within Hashem. So there's this constant tension that's going on. And because the body is more external, right? The body is more external, it's more of what we experience. So what do we experience? I live my life, and I don't think that, no, I want to be, lost in this, the rapture of Nadav and Avihu, right? Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aaron, they just wanted to be, their souls just wanted to go back to God, which is why they went into the Holy of Holies even when they weren't supposed to, right? Because they just wanted to be re-included in Hashem. But that's not my experience. I don't feel that I want to be re-included in Hashem, because I have the pull of the body in the opposite direction. So it's like these polar magnets, one pulling me to independence, one pulling me to re-inclusion, right? And Hashem wants us, he put us into a body because he wants us to stay separate from him on some level, right? He wants us to be independent beings who then acknowledge him. So without being an independent being, what would be the chiddush in me acknowledging Hashem? There would be no chiddush. If I was just a soul that was one with Hashem, then it would not be a big deal for me to recognize him. But when me, in my independent state, can recognize God, that is fulfilling the purpose of creation. That is making a dira b'tachtainim, that in my body I see a God, that is making Hashem a home in the lowest place. But it's for this reason that I don't experience this love. I don't experience this need to be reconnected with Hashem. So what is the meditation that I can do to then re-invoke this experience? Not to the extent that I need to actually have this experience of what we would call Kollel nefesh, of giving up my becoming completely one with Hashem, but while simultaneously maintaining my identity, still feeling this yearning, strong love and desire not to be separate from Hashem. So to understand this, we have to understand how we rationalize doing things that God told us not to do. We know Hashem created the world, and he created it in a way that it feels separate from him. But the truth is that it is actually completely and totally united with Hashem. It's just, there's this illusion. From the earth's perspective, from my human perspective, I see difference, and I see multiplicity, and I see separation. From God's perspective, God looks at the earth, the world, and he sees it. You could say there's different mashalim that are given. He sees it almost as his speech before it is spoken. That's one of the examples that Chassidus gives for how one we are with Hashem. So all the words that are in my consciousness that I have not yet spoken, where are they? Once I speak them, they're going to be out in the world, and they'll be separate from me. Before I speak them, they're completely and totally one within me, right? They're thoughts. But you can say they're thoughts, and sometimes you can say even pre-thought, right? There's all the thoughts I have come from my consciousness, even pre-thought, right? So, you can say it comes from Chachma, or from Chachma, and then begins to have more shape in Bina, and then finally moving into the world of expression, where it actually becomes its own individual thought. But before the speech comes out into the world, it's still within Hashem. So Hashem, from Hashem's perspective, the world is completely and totally one with him, like our words are before we speak them. And every moment on earth every moment that we encounter, every moment that a Jew is alive, we have a choice at every moment. I can either choose to reveal how the world is one with Hashem, or I can choose to continue acting from my human experience and conceal how the world is one with Hashem. That is every moment that we live. Every moment that we live, every choice that we make, every action that we do has the potential to reveal God or conceal God. And so let's say I am about to eat a meal, right? I'm about to eat a meal. And so as I'm going to sit down to eat, I have a chance to make a bracha, set an intention, understand that this food that I'm going to eat is going to fuel the rest of my day, which will hopefully be filled with actions that reveal Hashem in this world, right? That could be my experience before I eat a meal. But for many people, and myself included, sometimes we eat a meal and literally none of those things come into our head. Not one of those thoughts. We just want to eat. We're hungry. The food is good. We just want to eat. And even for sometimes, and for some of us, even just stopping to make a bracha can pose as a very serious challenge to remember to say a bracha, to acknowledge that it is God who gave me this food. That can be very, very difficult for me. Why is it that it's difficult for me? Because I don't see this as something that is essential to my Jewishness. I don't see it as something that if I don't do it, I'm being cut away from Hashem. I'm denying God. I don't perceive it that way. I think, oh, it's not a big deal, right? That's not a big deal if I don't make a bracha. It's not a big deal if I don't daven this morning. It's not such a big deal when I mistreat somebody else. It's not such a big deal when God doesn't really care that whatever it is, all of these small little things that come up in our lives, they're not such a big deal. Let's think again, going back to our relationship construct, that when you're in a relationship with somebody, all of these things that are not such a big deal, if I just do them, what happens when they start to build up? They become big deals. And that's where relationships begin to disintegrate. And actually, very often, it's in specifically the small things that the relationship disintegrates, and not in the big things. And the reason that the relationship disintegrates in the small things is because from the perspective of the person who's maybe doing the small things, they think it's not a big deal, but from the perspective of the person who the small things are being done against, they're like, you're not seeing me. Right? When you do these small things, you don't see me in this relationship. You're not actually seeing me. It's not about the big things. It's specifically in the small moments that you're acknowledging my existence. It's specifically in the small things that you're acknowledging that you know what I want. And what's deeper in me than what I want. Right? And in you recognizing what I want. So you can make a grand gesture, or again, going back to in a crisis, you can come out and support me in those very big moments when it becomes very obvious that if you don't support me, this relationship's over, right? But that's not what creates the relationship. That's not what makes the relationship real. That's not where we find ourselves in our relationships. We find ourselves in the small things. And so the same thing happens with our relationship with Hashem, is that we think the small things are not a matter of identity. We think the small things are only when it comes to something big that questions the whole question of am I a Jew or not, those wake up that love. But if I stop and think, every moment I'm either can reveal Hashem or hide Hashem. That means in this moment when I am choosing to perhaps hide God, I am not seeing God in this relationship. And that creates actually a pretty deep rift in the relationship. It's not such a small thing. It becomes a big thing. And in my own brain, from my perspective, the more I invest in the small things, the more I am seeing Hashem in my life. The more I invest in every moment revealing Hashem, the more real God becomes to me. And if anything, that strengthens my Jewish identity more than anything else. So when I stop for a minute and I think, and again, the reason this is like we mentioned before, this is called the short, long way, is because this is not the way that we live all the time. This is what we pull on in certain moments. I stop and I think, I would give up my life for Hashem. If it came down to it, and someone came up to me and told me that you have to say that you are not a Jew, I would very likely give up my life for God, because I would not let myself be torn away from my deepest identity. And yet at this moment, I am going to do something that Hashem doesn't want me to do. I can't make the sacrifice for something this small. And it sounds a little bit negative. It's not like it's not coming from, it's not, we want to build up the relationship from a space of positivity also. And that's why we said we put all the work in building up that I want to do something for Hashem because I know Hashem, right? But then coming at it from this angle of Mesiras Nefesh, of giving up my life for Hashem, saying, I can't create the sacrifice in this moment. And you know what? In this moment is just as important as the moment of giving up my life for Hashem. This moment is just as affirming of God as actual Mesiras Nefesh. Because I am revealing Hashem in this world instead of hiding him. Really, it's all the same. Every action is the same. Every action is either revelation or concealment. And I'm making that choice. Am I going to reveal or am I going to conceal? Am I going to allow myself to connect with that identity of my soul? I'm going to take this little moment of let's say right now, I do not want to part with my money to give tzedakah, right? I don't want to, in this moment, I don't want to part with my money to give tzedakah. And I'm going to turn this into as big of a question as somebody saying, convert or die. Right? This holds in this moment that same weight. This holds in this moment that weight of, are you going to reveal God now or not? Are you going to stand up to the part of you that desires to maintain its independence and allow your truest, innermost desire of connecting with God to shine through or not? And when I set it up like that, it actually becomes that force of friction against the Flintstone. Because I'm saying, yes, every moment is an identity question. Not just the moment of Mesiras Nefesh is an identity question. Every moment has the potential to be an identity question of my Jewishness. And that creates that friction on the Flintstone and allows the love for Hashem to come out. That latent love that is always there. And it allows it to burn in my soul. And I don't have to sit and contemplate on something in like a deep I don't have to use my brain in like a deep way. This is not a very intellectual meditation. It's a much more, it's actually a much more, almost you might say, emotional and intuitive meditation of saying, of like bringing something up to myself and saying, this is who I am, right? And through that question, is this going to be who I am? What kind of person am I going to be? Am I going to be the person who denies God in the world or who reveals God in the world? And that lights up in my soul this element of that hidden love. And so we'll conclude with this final part from Parak Chaf Hey, where the Alter Rebbe says, V'zeu shekasav, and that which it says, that it is very close to you, to your heart. That at any moment, at any hour, it is in your hands, shal adam, in a person's hands, and in his, like we have agency, it's in our agency. To remove the silly folly, the spirit of folly that enters into my head and says, this is not a big deal. Right? The thing that says, what does this matter? I have the capability to push that thought away. To say, yes, this matters. My life matters. My choices matter. And it's the Ruach Shtus that says it doesn't matter, right? It's a spirit of folly that says it doesn't matter. This moment matters. Every moment matters. V'hashgacha mikirbai. It's a sense of forgetfulness, right? Because the memory is inside of me. I have the memory of connection with Hashem. I'm a Jew. I have that inside of me. It's not something new. So it's in forgetting that Jewishness. That's what is new. That's a forgetting, because it's already there, right? Uliskar, to remember, and I'm just like focusing on this word because I think that language of memory is very powerful. To say, you know this already. You just have to remember it. And when it comes to memory, the interesting thing is it's not even so much about needing to, we have all these memories. What's the real tool we need is recall, right? What is going to bring that memory from all my storage system in my brain into the forefront of my brain? And so he's saying this is how you recall. This is the trigger. The trigger is saying this is a question of identity, right? This is just as much a question of identity as Mesiras Nefesh. And thereby I arouse this love LaHashem Echad HaMesuteres, this hidden love for the one God that it's hidden within me. I know that it is within me without a doubt. Right? I know for sure I inherited. I'm a child of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I have this love. It is a memory that I have. I just need to recall it. This is one of the last tips that Moshe Rabbeinu gives the Jewish people. He commands us to say Shema Yisrael 2 times a day. Why? Because Shema Yisrael is actually meant to trigger this memory. L'kabel alav malchus shemayim b'mesiras nefesh. What is the meditation we're supposed to have when we say Shema? One of the meditations that we say, that is said that we have when we say Shema, the intention, the kavanah we say is that I would give up my life for Hashem. We know that the Jewish people have died with Shema Yisrael on their lips, that I would give up my life for Hashem. But here we're saying, no, I don't need to give up my life for Hashem. I am going to live my life for Hashem. I'm going to reveal Hashem in my life. It's about Hashem Echad, Hashem's oneness. Everything in this world can reveal or conceal. And I'm going to connect to the revelation. I'm going to declare that God is one in every moment of my life. And I say this twice a day to remind myself of this, to arouse that hidden love for Hashem. And he promises the Jewish people that Hashem gave you this awe. Hashem gave you this ability to give up your life for me. And we trigger that through this process of saying Shema. And so why do we say Shema twice a day? Again, is to give us the ability to connect to this hidden love within us for Hashem, and to arouse this love for Hashem from this space of Mesiras Nefesh, from this space of saying this is a question of identity, and at your core identity, you love God. At your core identity, you are a revealer of God. And I think that this is a very powerful but also practical meditation that we can take with us. That it doesn't involve needing to sit for a long time. It involves just an element of presence, focus, recognition that every moment matters, and also belief that I have it inside of me, right? Believing that I do have this love of Hashem inside of me, and that it is inherent within my soul. And once I believe that, then I also can believe that I have the ability to trigger this memory, and through triggering this memory, to never allow myself to disconnect from Hashem. So this is the short, long way of revealing our love for Hashem that is very ma'id, very accessible for us, that we can do on a daily basis as we work simultaneously, as we work to develop this robust knowledge of God that gives us this created love of Hashem. We have this inherent love of Hashem to fall back on when we don't feel that at that moment. So yeah, we should all have this ability to feel the love of Hashem and to feel that we are actively in a relationship with Hashem at every moment in our lives. Yes, sure.